following is a paid program. The opinions expressed are not necessarily those of WNBU and Interbanks Media. Welcome to All Things Money with David Blain, a thoughtful and revealing discussion of actionable ideas and effective strategies to help you through the complex world of investing, taxes, and real estate. Now, with All Things Money, here's David Blain.
Hello and welcome to All Things Money. I'm your host, David Blain. We thank you for joining us today on 94.1 FM WNBU, as well as cable TV 10 in New Bern. Some of you also may be streaming our show, either video or audio, from our website, www.dlblain.com. We welcome you as well. Also, feel free to contact us. We love hearing from our viewers and listeners. What's going on out there? What are your concerns? What are your comments on what we're discussing here? We try to make the news relevant to you, economic news, financial news, personal finance. We love to hear what you want to hear about, so our number is 252-633-0107. The email at the show is allthingsmoney@dlblain.com. And, of course, you can go to the website, dlblain.com, and there's a big Contact Us button there. Okay, well, we've got a lot of stuff today to cover. I hope you're ready. We'll start off a couple things that I like to highlight. Student loans, college spending. It's one of the things that as your parents out there or even grandparents considering funding the college, we have a lot of grandparents that the children, as everybody knows, that people out there today are having a tough time, and some of the younger families that have children getting ready to college can't really afford it, and so a lot of the grandparents are asking us, hey, how do we fund this? What's the best way to go? And so we deal a lot in the personal finance. It's a huge expense for some people, right behind buying a house, a college education. A college education at a liberal arts school, a private liberal arts school, easily runs into $100,000 over 4 years. Of course, if you go to law school or medical school, those costs ramp up significantly. And so we like to talk about education and funding. And is it worthwhile? I mean, that's what investing and saving and spending is all about. Is the value you receive worth what it costs? And one of the things that we see is people going into significant amounts of debt to fund their education. I saw, I think it was a bill in Congress, and believe me, I'm not for more federal regulation, and I don't think Congress needs to mandate this, but there's a rule in Congress or a proposed bill that would require states to disclose the average starting salary of the graduates of state schools. So, for example, if you go to NC State, as part of the marketing materials or whatever, they would, right next to what it costs, they would have to disclose what the average starting salary of graduates in that major would be. Now, there are some states and some schools that already do this. And the point of that is that if you're going, there was a part of the story, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal. It's really about the only normal newspaper that I read, where they were interviewing a student, and he said, well, I went to college and I majored in political science, and I've got $100,000 of student loans, and I was hoping to get a job with the government. Of course, that's a whole other issue there. But and he couldn't get a job, and so he was working for his father, power washing houses. And he said, if I would have known what the starting salary was going to be or what the job prospects were, he said, I probably would have picked a different major. And so this whole, the value that you're getting for college is a big question. So this came out a couple weeks ago on student loan. I mean, we've just hammered the subprime mortgage crisis, how, it brought down the downfall of the economy and housing and things like that. And the federal government's liberalization since 2007 of the student loan requirements has created this massive bubble in student loans. And as I've said all the time, whether it be education, health care, buying a loaf of bread, whatever it is, if you put someone in between the money and the provider of the service. So if someone else is paying for a product or service that the consumer gets, the prices will diverge from reality. And that's what we've seen in education, is people pony up for these student loans from the federal government with, they're somewhat simple to get. They basically hand them out to anyone. And so that we see now that a new report shows that $300 billion of the $900 billion in outstanding student loans would be considered subprime debt. This is a rise from 24% 5 years earlier, according to a report from TransUnion. And TransUnion is one of the big credit reporting agencies, and they called all the data from people that owe student loans, and they determined that subprime make up about a third of that debt. Now, interestingly, if you look at private student debt, which the federal government has basically just about put out of business. I mean, there's very little market for private student debt. It's essentially all federal funded student debt. The only 5% of student loans of private debt are delinquent. And the reason is because the private lenders go through a more rigorous process, and they're not as anxious just to give money to anyone. Another thing, this explosion, the student loan debt has risen 75% between 2007 and 2012, with the average amount of debt held by each borrower rising 30% to around $24,000. So we've seen since 2007 this not only an explosion to $900 billion of student loan debt. That number has increased 75% in the past 5 years, and we see that the dollar amount people are borrowing has increased 30%. And it's an indication of the runaway costs of education, the giving money to people that frankly shouldn't be going to college. I mean, there's nothing, we need to educate our kids, and that's the point of this, is when you're looking at, sending your kid, what's your child going to do, or your grandchild, is look at, the money, is it really worth spending $40,000 a year at some liberal arts, private liberal arts school for the education that they get. And we definitely recommend that parents and grandparents don't sacrifice your own ability to feed yourself, house yourself for the student there are, because what happens is then you impoverish yourself and you're going to be dependent on your child, and a lot of what we're seeing is a lot of the children, it's not working out well, and so they're not able to take care of the parent either. So we think that there's a middle ground there. When you're looking at it, get with an advisor, someone that deals with college planning. Look at the options, loans, grants, scholarships, the cost of private versus public, the different majors and things like that, and come to a rational decision, because just going and spending $100,000 on a college education is not necessarily the best route to take. Okay, well, we're coming up on our first break. When we come back, we'll wrap up a little bit about student loans and move on to some other topics. For All Things Money, I'm David Blain.